What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. Be sure to hit that like button, comment and subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or a video drops. Also give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Before I go into anything related to the New York Giants, I do want to shout out our new 20-something subscribers. Some of you who follow the YouTube page know I was very angry about what the Yankees did with Oswald Peraza and not putting him in the lineup. Made a rant video, and to this point, it's gotten over 850 views, which is our highest viewed video as of right now, and our most liked video, because right now it's at 61 likes. If that gets to 1K, I will be thrilled, but we'll see how far the algorithm takes in, stuff like that. Nonetheless, 20-some-odd new subscribers. Welcome to the channel. You get the truth here. You get the facts here. Yankees, Giants. We have Boys in the Big Apple podcast, which is basically MLB, NBA, college football, and NFL. That's on Mondays at 8:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's going to be a lot more shit to talk about with the NFL coming up this next week. College football coming off of that. It's today. So a lot of stuff for you guys. I can't wait to talk to you guys as, your new subscribers. So hit that like button, do all the good stuff. Share this out to your friends. Once again, I appreciate it. So we have a lot of to talk about here on the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. We're talking about Giants waiver claims. The Giants recently also cut Blake Martinez. The decision to cut Quincy Roche, the signing of Tony Jefferson, injured reserve moves, cuts in practice squad signees. So we're going to talk about that one by one, and let's go right into it. So the Giants waiver claims, that was really the first thing that capped off the day on Wednesday. Not really too many cuts. I mean, they had some roster maneuvering, but I'm pretty sure all the guys they cut were signed. Back to the active roster, your Austin Calitros, Max Garcia was re-signed at the practice squad. Tanner Hudson was re-signed, so it wasn't really a big deal. They did have to make some room, and they made some room by putting guys on IR. Let's talk about the waiver claim. So I'm going to start with the guy that is from Notre Dame, and I'm going to be rooting on Notre Dame tonight. They're my college football team, and this guy's Nick McLeod. Bills, Bengals at the NFL level started. No games last year for the Bengals. 2 games. Played 12% of the defensive snaps, 21% on special teams. I'm taking this from an article, so whichever article that is, I forget at the moment. Shout-outs to whoever wrote it and that stuff. So with 1 year of NFL experience, McLeod appeared in all 3 preseason games this past preseason, playing 108 total snaps, collecting 5 tackles, giving up 27 yards on 5 receptions, including a touchdown. McLeod is a solid tackling defensive back and plays the run well, but has struggled a lot in coverage. In fact, he's primarily played cornerback this preseason, spending 53 snaps to position, 12 in the slot, 22 at free safety, and 21 in the box. Primarily an outside cornerback, besides the safety position, so take what you want there. And that's good depth, honestly, because the Giants right now, they have a lot of slot corners. Darnay Holmes is not an outside guy. Cordell Flott is not an outside guy. Darnay Holmes isn't an outside guy. Hell, Aaron Robinson, they're trying to make him work at this moment. And then Darius Williams, we'll talk about him in a little bit. He went on the IR. So they didn't really have anybody. We're going to talk about some other guys that they brought in, but they're not really outside corners like McLeod is. So those are the stats on McLeod. I do want to gather something as well from one of the guys at Cover One. He was texting with a content creator on Twitter, and this is what he got about McLeod. McLeod is interesting, was in real competition to be a depth piece, but just lost out. Got snatched by Cincinnati last year when the Bills cut him, and then the Bills grabbed him back the first chance they got during the year. He's fast and athletic and competes, saw a bunch of safety work this offseason with the twos. So he can work safety, outside corner, and some slot in a pinch. Solid bottom end depth guy that has some potential for more, can play press and off, both man and zone. No real strong suit, but nothing he's overly weak in. So that is Nick McLeod. He, I think, went to Cincinnati before Dame. I might be wrong because I might be confusing that with his NFL team. So he went to NC State, then he went to Notre Dame for the COVID season. So there's some fun facts right there about Nick McLeod, the newest New York Giants corner/safety. The next guy is also a former Buffalo Bill. His name is Jack Anderson. He played a little with the Eagles in the preseason. Didn't really do that good. That's why he was cut. Has played some center, some left guard, and the right guard position. So he's as interior offensive line as you get. Last year, he was a 7th-round selection for the Buffalo Bills out of Texas Tech. They cut him, and the Eagles picked him up on September 21st, and he made it to the active roster a few times, played in 2 games. Not much to take from that, but he allowed 7 pressures, 3 quarterback hits, and 0 sacks while playing for the Eagles this preseason, which isn't really good. Yes, no stat sheet, nothing like that in terms of sacks, but pressures and quarterback hits, not very good. And he also played 81 snaps the last year for the Philadelphia Eagles, giving up 1 pressure in 2 games. So he has a ton of work to do. 7th-round pick. Bills connection, Eagles connection. You guys know that Brandon Brown is an Eagles guy. So this really shouldn't come as a surprise. Collaborating work between Joe Shane and not Brian Dable, but Brandon Brown. And here's what the same guy said about Jack Anderson. Anderson is met. Cup of coffee with the Bills, then signed off the practice squad by Philly. Physical, but lacked technique and athleticism. He is a dirtbag. He is a mauler. The type of guy that Bobby Johnson likes. So he's going to be a developmental piece for the New York Giants. We obviously know they claimed a couple of other offensive linemen we'll talk about throughout the course of this podcast. The next guy is Justin Lane from the Steelers. He was selected in the 3rd round of the 2019 draft. Didn't see any defensive playing time, mainly special teams as a gunner. In 2020, he got some more playing time, 11% of the defensive snaps. Then last year, 2% of the defensive snaps. So not a ton of experience when you're talking about Justin Lane. 16 tackles last year. The year before that, 22. No tackles for loss, nothing like that. Just a fumble recovery last year. In coverage, let's talk about him in coverage. I think he could play both the slot and the outside, but I know, at least from my Steeler friends, he was competing in the slot a little bit. So I'm either confusing him with James Pierre, or I'm just solely talking about him. But anyway, he's cut. He's now on the Giants. Last year, in his limited experience, gave up 3 completions on 4 targets, 17 yards. So not a ton of yardage there, which is actually good. 75% completion to go along with a passer rating of 82.3. And then the year before that, 2020, where he saw most of his playing time, he allowed 10 completions on 12 targets for a completion percentage of 83.3, 127 yards, a touchdown, and 138.5 passer rating, which really isn't good. So, just a fringe guy, a backup guy. The Giants needed some veteran depth, and I would take Justin Lane and Nick McLeod over guys like Zion Gilbert and Khalil Dorsey, Darren Evans, Elijah Griffin. I would take these guys because they've worked with competent franchises in terms of defenses. Like McLeod worked with the Bills, and Justin Lane worked with the Steelers. So I would take that. And I think they've done, or at least did, a pretty good job at the waiver wire getting some of these guys. Now, one of my favorites that I will put on here, and a lot of Jet fans are still unhappy about this, Jason Pinnock. He was a corner at Pittsburgh. Last year they picked him up, I think it was in the 6th round. Saw more playing time towards the end of the season. Played in 12 games, started 2, 16 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, a pass deflection. And that's pretty much the stat line for him. In terms of coverage, he was decent. His passer rating is a little high because of the touchdown, but he allowed 7 completions on 9 targets, 78 yards, 1 touchdown, 139.8 passer rating, and that's pretty much that. Was sent on 1 blitz, didn't pressure the quarterback or anything like that. And, shout out to Bobby Skinner. You did a good film breakdown. Jason Pinnock, for a guy that really doesn't know the safety position all that well, he did good with the Jets last year. Didn't really make any bad plays, but also at the same time, he's not going to wow you. This is a 6th, 7th round pick we're talking about, so, we really need guys at the back end of the roster. Tony Jefferson signing helps. He'll probably be on the active roster at some point, but the waiver claim of Jason Pinnock was very smart for the New York Giants, getting a corner, and I think he played outside at Pittsburgh, even though it's been 2 years removed from his college play. And then, obviously he's a safety, so versatile. That's what you need in a wink defense, and he played 24% of the defensive snaps last year. Now we go to one more guy before we go on to another subject, and that's Tyree Phillips from the Ravens. And I was questioning whether the New York Giants would actually get him, and guess what? They got him. It's at the expense of somebody else that we'll talk about in just a second. The Giants claimed Tyree Phillips from the Ravens. I'm going to look up his stat line as we speak. He actually, if I'm not mistaken, Tyree Phillips, if this would load, which it will, 3rd round pick out of 2020. And guess what? Ben Bredeson, I believe, was a 4th round pick 2020 for the Ravens. So it's weird that they're both on the roster right now, I must say. But in his career for the Ravens, he's had some injury issues, but started total of 5 games last year, played in 10. Then in 2020, 8 games started, 12 games played, 1 fumble recovery for 13 yards. There was that one play where I think Jackson fumbled or something happened in the backfield, and Tyree just took the ball and fucking ran right up the middle. And he was holding both shoulders, just mowing through people. So that's remarkable to some. He played 54% of the defensive snaps defensive snaps. We're talking a lot of defense, but 54% of the offensive snaps in 2020. In 2021, 51%. And he played a little bit of right tackle last year, right guard the year before. So he is somewhat versatile if you want to talk about that. 6'5", 345, 25 years old. In 2020, he allowed 6 sacks in 8 games started, 16 pressures and a quarterback hit allowed. So a lot more sacks than pressures when you're really knowing the game, I should say, because 16 pressures isn't a lot. For that span it is, and 6 sacks for that span it is. So he was going through some rookie struggles, obviously, and only 1 quarterback hit allowed, but the sacks obviously piled up. Then in 2021, 5 games started, 1 sack, 17 pressures, and 3 quarterback hits allowed. So my opinion on this guy, I want to say he was supposed to be the starting center, but he got injured. He's probably going to be more of an interior guy. I think they're going to look for him to be a little bit more than that, swing tackle-ish, because Devery Hamilton right now is going to be the left guard in week 1 as far as I'm concerned, and Josh Azudu is still coming back from injury, so they didn't really get a depth guy in terms of offensive tackle, and, they're trying to do this with Tyree Phillips, and to be fair, who's out there that's a good swing tackle? I mean, besides Darrell Williams, I can't think of many names, so anyway, I'm going to take a sip real quickly, and then we're going to move forward with the next subject, which is quite controversial among Giant fans. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a sip here. Maybe you guys can too. Let's talk about one of the elephants in the room, if not the elephant in the room. Elephant in the room is Blake Martinez being cut. Interesting subject. Interesting subject, to say the least. Man, I don't even know where to start with this thing. And I did an instant reaction video when he was cut. And it still doesn't make a ton of sense. And listen, on here, we're going to give you the truth. We're not giving you the honeymoon bullshit, okay? When Gettleman made bad moves, I critiqued it. When Joe Shane made bad moves, I critiqued it. And it just seems that there's going to be a lot of struggling, I guess, in terms of the play on the field and some growing pains with the front office, too, because Joe Shane's new at this. This is bad foresight by Joe Shane. Because Blake Martinez could have been cut for, I think, $2 point some odd million in March. And people will say, well, why would you cut him in March, this, and this? Because even though there's $3 million, I think, that would be attributed in terms of dead cap money, you take the $2 million and run with it. Maybe use that to accumulate a new free agent or an extra linebacker, offensive lineman, or you go out and use that as a draft pick. $2 million in terms of contracts, of course. So that didn't make any sense. People are throwing out this idea, and I'm not saying it's, a conspiracy theory that Blake Martinez didn't fit the scheme. I'm not saying that. But if he didn't fit the scheme, and he didn't fit what Martindale wanted to do on defense, why did you bring him in? Why did you not just cut him from the start? And I'm pretty sure before they even restructured his contract, he could have been cut, and the Giants would have saved a lot more money than they would have if they restructured. So I'm pretty sure the restructuring even was just not a great thing, knowing they cut him now. So that's the financial standpoint. You didn't get any high-priority linebackers within the first 3, 4, 5 rounds of the draft. Now, Michael McFadden, I believe he was a 5th-round pick out of Indiana. I get it. Darian Beavers, 6th-round pick out of Cincinnati. It would have made more sense if Darian Beavers had not torn his ACL because of MetLife turf. And I'm of belief that MetLife turf played into it, but it's not the entire reason. I feel like the training staff and maybe some dietary stuff plays into it. I'm not going to be a conspiracy theorist. I'm just presenting my reasons. But it would have made a lot more sense if he didn't tear his ACL. Because you would be, okay, it's better than Micah McFadden, and, he's going to patch up with Tay Crowder, whatever. I don't know, man. Just bad foresight. And now you have Tay Crowder, who's not a good solo linebacker. Like, if he's the linebacker one, he's not good, okay? He's average at best. I'm going a little far with that. But in extended playing time, when he had Reggie Ragland and Jalen Smith and Benardrick McKinney, when he had those guys alongside him, he didn't play well. Like, Jalen Smith, obviously, he's been a past his prime linebacker. I don't really know why they wouldn't bring him back. Like, I thought he could have came back and played well for this scheme and just been a seasoned veteran. And makes more sense now, but they don't have any money to spend. So it's going to be tough the first few weeks. And I'm not saying that, Blake Martinez is going to be here beyond this year. That's not true. Blake Martinez was never going to be here beyond this year. But you need competent linebacking, veteran stuff among that core. Austin Calitro, yes, he played like 16 games with the Seahawks 4 years ago. And he played a little bit with the Bengals and a couple other teams. But that's not seasoned veteranship. That's not. Micah McFadden, he's a rookie. And then you have Carter Coughlin, who they were trying to convert to inside linebacker. He got hurt, so you really couldn't make the conversion there, and then take Crowder. So if I'm going to forecast anything, and this is something I don't want to be right on, the run defense is going to struggle within the first few weeks. Whether you want to take Derrick Henry as a joke and the Tennessee offense as a joke, whether you want to talk about McCaffrey is a joke, whether you want to talk about Elliott or Pollard as a joke. After that, what's week 4? David Montgomery, and then after that, we face the Packers, so that's Aaron Jones, even though they're not going to run it a shit ton. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. And then week 6 is the Ravens. So there's going to be a lot of struggling linebacker play. That's pretty much what I have to say on the Blake subject. It's just bad foresight by the New York Giants. And what I will top that off with saying is the Quincy Roche thing. I originally said the only way the Giants are covering their ass in terms of this Roche cut is the fact that they have a solid inside linebacking core. Now that statement looks a little shaky because they cut Blake Martinez. And why does the Roche thing have to deal with the inside linebacker position? Because Roche, first of all, is better than O'Shane Ximines. He's better than Timon Fox. And, Timon Fox gets the coupon of he's a rookie. O'Shane Ximines every year puts up a solid preseason, puts up a solid camp, and then he comes in the regular season and shits the fucking bed. That's what he is. That's what he does. First year, he had 2 sacks in the preseason. I think it was actually 3 because he had 2 against the Bengals and 1 against the Bears. Then you look at the second preseason. It wasn't really 2020, but 2021-ish. You take a look at that. He had a sack against the Browns, but that's pretty much it. He played for most of that game, and guess what? The fucking Browns ran all over us. Every time they didn't have a hole up the middle, guess what? They bounced it to the outside. So there's that. And then this preseason, I think he had a few quarterback hits, no sacks for the defensive line and all, which is a little concerning. But he had no sacks, like 3 quarterback hits, something like that. I mean, I just don't know what they are looking at in terms of that. Like the Ryan Connolly thing, you could make an excuse and say, well, he's coming off a torn ACL. Alonzo Russell, well, I mean, he's not really a full-time wide receiver. He's not even been a backup wide receiver for any roster. But this is probably the most questionable. And I will continue to question this regime based on things they do. And guess what? It is their initiative to prove me wrong. Right? And O'Shane Ximines cannot set the edge. You're relying also on stats from 3 years ago. The last time he touched a quarterback officially for a sack, that was 2019. 4.5 sacks. How many pressures? I think it was 12 pressures that he put up. And then maybe like 4 or 5 the last 2 years. So I'm just real pissed with that. And sure, O'Shane Ximines may fit the scheme better. But I would have just been better if Quincy Roche and O'Shane Ximines didn't make the roster at all. We wouldn't even have this conversation. But at the same time, we would. It just doesn't make any sense, man. It just really doesn't make any sense. It has me a little worried. And listen, at least Quincy Roche stayed on the practice squad, but he could have been surfing for other teams. Alex Bachman is currently doing that. He didn't resign to the Giants practice squad. He wants to find other teams to play for, and that's his job. That's what he wants to do. Quincy Roche could have done that. Hopefully at some point, and I know fans are wrong on certain things, like people thought Isaiah Wilson was going to be good, whether they were joking or not. They thought Mike Lennon was going to be at least halfway decent. I know they're wrong on certain things like that, but I don't think they would be wrong in the Roche thing, because Roche, last year, he played pretty damn well, and he played better in the first half of the season than Lorenzo Carter, and Lorenzo Carter only just went in, ballistic in the second half because of a contract year. And guess what? He got it with the Falcons. Good for him. And then he was pretty much better than O'Shane Ximines. Quincy Roche, he forced a fumble on Derek Carr to end the game against the Raiders. What did O'Shane Ximines do? He actually continued the game because he stepped off sides, and then Darnay Holmes did the interception. But no, offsides defense number 53. So I get it. Listen, he's on the last year of his contract. He's probably not going to be re-signed, but there is no reason at all he should be on this roster over Quincy Roche. A guy that's better in terms of pass rush, a guy that can set the edge, and I haven't even spoken on the most important part of this whole conversation, which is that maybe, and I mean maybe, Azeez and Tibbs are out week 1. So if they're both out, what's your edge presence? Your inside linebacking core, what if Micah McFadden makes a few mistakes? What if Tay Crowder makes a few mistakes? I mean, him against Derrick Henry, I'm a little scared of. But that's going to be, I guess we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, man. I mean, we can only talk about so much. We can only say so much. And I'm a little surprised that they didn't go out and trade Darius Slayton. Going back to the Martinez thing, I'm surprised they didn't go out and trade Slayton. I mean, there were rumors and all this shit. I mean, they did say, okay, he's going to be on the 53 for week 1, but that cleared around $2 million. And the Giants could have done something with that. I think right now they're under the cap $4 million. $2 million would have done something, $2.5 million. So you trade him for at least a piece and then get somebody on the waiver wire. Nobody talks about that as much if you keep Blake Martinez. So it is what it is, man. It is what it is. We got to move on. And yeah, so we are right now in a total of 24 minutes into this thing, which is actually pretty good. I am hoping, as of this moment, I'm hoping for Tuesday's podcast to be with Paul Dottino. It's not going to be live. It's going to be recorded. Basically, going to ask him some roster questions. And I think at that point, honestly, the unofficial depth chart should come out. We'll see. Anyway, let's talk about Tony Jefferson a little bit. He's played a lot of years at the NFL level, made his debut in 2013 with the Cardinals, spent time with them till 2017, went to Baltimore, and then 2020, he didn't play for them. I think he was cut in 2019 or just not re-signed. Then he played a little bit with San Francisco and then came back to play with Baltimore. So, there's that. Last season, for Baltimore and San Francisco, he actually recorded a sack. I believe that was actually with the Ravens. 18 tackles, total of 1 tackle for a loss and a quarterback hit. So that's that. In terms of coverage, he gave up 6 receptions, 10 targets, for a total of 52 yards, which isn't bad. A 73.7 passer rating, not bad either. The year before, he also had a pressure on the season. No statistical stuff with the 49ers except for a tackle. And then 2019, before 2020, allowed 8 completions, 14 targets, 57.1 completion percentage, 247 yards, a passer rating of 141.4, which isn't good. A total of 21 tackles and 1 pressure. So, he's going to be an interesting ad for the New York Giants. He's going to be a veteran ad, which makes a lot of things better in terms of the secondary, in terms of the safety position. And we'll see, obviously, how far the cornerback additions go. With San Francisco, he played 2% of the snaps last year in 2 games, and then also 33% of the snaps in 4 games with the Baltimore Ravens. The year before he wasn't playing, which was 2020, and then 2019, 94%. 96%. So he played a lot of snaps with the Ravens over the course of his prime, if you will. So he's going to be an interesting ad. He's going to be an interesting ad in the box, deep. We'll see what he does, man. We'll see what he does. Let's talk about some IR moves. I'm going to take a sip and we'll get right into that. So some IR moves. The New York Giants moved these 3 players to injured reserve for the first 4 games of the season. That's Shane Lemieux, Ellerson Smith, and Rodarius Williams. Shane Lemieux, this is becoming a habit. I don't want to say that too much, but he was injury-free his rookie year, and then last year he gets stuck with an injury in the preseason, and then he comes out, patella tendon injury, boom, and re-aggravates all that shit. He's done for the year. He's going to be out for the first 4 weeks, so that will give Devery Hamilton, Josh Azudu, whoever's going to play left guard some time to get in there and thrift. I expected a little more out of him this year, but, honestly, we'll see. I think they're going to be looking for a left guard in the future. Maybe that actually is Josh Azudu, or Azudu's a backup tackle, a backup guard. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Lemieux seemed to have improved a little bit in his pass protection. He's still got the grit in him, as Pat Shermer used to say. So we'll see. We'll see what the timeline is for Shane Lemieux. And I'm a little shocked, though, because they did this. They, even with all the guys, they knew they were going to be out, the first 4 weeks of the season. Why didn't they put him on PUP originally? Because they did that with Parrott. They did that with Nick Gates, and they're already proclaimed to be out for the first 4 games. So you could have opened a couple of roster spots with that, by putting him on PUP before the Jets game. So, you have to put people on IR either way. So, anyway, Ellerson Smith, not too impressive. Camp, everybody was hyping the shit out of him. I didn't really get the hype. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I actually said I believed in the Ellerson Smith hype, but I just don't know where it comes from. I feel like there's this thing with Giant fans and second-year rotational edge rushers that they get hype from. Lorenzo Carter was one, Oshane Ximines was one, and Ellerson Smith falls into the same category. So it's the second year he's missing the first few games of the year. I forget what injury he has. Wasn't overly impressive in the Patriots game. Impressed to start camp, but obviously you're facing ones and twos, and was blown off of a running play at FanFest by Vanille. So take that as you will. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I feel like they're going to be looking once again, and I know this is really more of a negative podcast kind of thing. I mean, kind of not. But I feel like they're going to be looking for another backup edge rusher in the next few years. Maybe it's just a reserve piece, or they draft somebody in the 7th round. But I don't think Ellerson Smith is going to stay here long. I think the injury hurt him and his chances. He's one of those lankier guys. Well, he's more built than Oshane Ximines, but he's still a lanky guy on that defensive line. Then Rodarius Williams. They kept him originally, and then they put him on the IR. I don't really know why they didn't put him on PUP originally, because he didn't play all throughout training camp. He didn't play all throughout the preseason games. He must have done something in the rehab where I don't want to say re-aggravated the ACL because that would be wrong, but did something where it kind of stunted his rehab. So that's like one of the things I think I'm going to ask Paul Titino is like why they didn't do this earlier. You know, you could have opened a roster spot for somebody else to come in at cornerback and compete. Maybe that guy would have made the roster, but we'll see, man. I'm a little confused. I'm a little confused by it. But we'll see. So here were the cuts that were not re-signed to the practice squad. Sandro Platzgummer was a bit of a silent cut because it originally said he made the 53, and then it said he didn't make the 53. Alex Bachman, a lot of people were just raging about this. I don't know why. Alex Bachman has not made several NFL rosters over the years. Didn't make the Rams in 2019. Didn't make the Giants in 20. Didn't make the Giants in 21. He's a preseason guy. He's a preseason body. Not much more than that. David Sills would have the same fate if it wasn't for him and Daniel Jones having that connection. So I just don't know where the outrage come from. Oh, keep Bachman. Why? Keep him over Darius Slayton? Over a guy that's actually established to some extent. Keelan Doss, I mean, he didn't really show much in the preseason. Jalen Moore was a guy we picked off the Ravens and really didn't do much. Travis Tavoynin made that awesome back shoulder catch. He bobbled it a little bit, but I mean, that's it for Tavoynin. Garrett McGinn, he played in the first preseason game. That was it. After that, because he got injured, that's when the pile of injuries started going down. Josh Revis, I mean, he played in all preseason games to my knowledge, and, you know, he's just a camp body, undrafted free agent camp body. Didn't really show too many things. Eric Smith, trash offensive tackle. I'm going to say it right now. I mean, I didn't like them bringing him back in. I know he's a depth piece, but he was never really going to make the roster. Jamil Douglas, I'm kind of surprised that he didn't make the roster because they seem to be high on him. And, you know, to be fair, he wasn't playing well. They got better guys in the market of the waiver wire, like Tyree Phillips and Jack Anderson. Anderson has somewhat of a ceiling, and Tyree Phillips, he's better than Jamil Douglas. I mean, he's made some quality starts over the last 2 years, while you really cannot say the same thing for Jamil Douglas. He's been bouncing from practice squad to practice squad to practice squad to active roster. Roy and Mbetika, I'm kind of surprised they didn't keep him on the practice squad just as a developmental piece, but I guess he'll be searching for another team. Maybe he goes back to, you know, Nigeria or does something else in terms of the NFL. Best wishes to him. Jalen Holmes, I'm actually once again kind of surprised they cut him because he was playing with the ones and twos in terms of D-line. Dexter Lawrence, when he wasn't playing, he was in. And then when Leonard Williams had the injury a little bit, Jalen Holmes was in. So, I mean, I'm kind of shocked. I thought he played a little decent in the preseason, but then was taken out the last game due to a concussion. David Moa, no surprise. I mean, he was pretty much a fan favorite last year when he forced those 2 fumbles, and I think he also got like half a sack. So, David Moa's a camp body. Darren Evans, not really much progression for him throughout camp, and he actually was signed to the practice squad. Then they cut him. Khalil Dorsey really fucked himself over in that last game where the pass interference at the end and then giving up the end zone touchdown to Calvin Jackson. Yusuf Corker is a guy that really never stood out in camp, got 1 interception, and that was it. And obviously they like Trenton Thompson more. And I couldn't agree with them more, to be honest with you, because Trenton Thompson has coverage skills. Yusuf Corker really doesn't, and he didn't really showcase a lot of stuff in the preseason or camp. Nate Metters played, safety. He was actually decent. Could have made the roster, but I would have rather Jason Pinnock and then a guy like Tony Jefferson on the practice squad. Metters actually made the practice squad, then got cut. So, shout out to Metters. Hopefully he finds a home. Elijah Griffin, he was brought in before the Bengals game. Wasn't good at all. Was probably the worst preseason corner I've ever seen. Compare him to the guys and the likes of Henry Tolliver, Ronald Zamort. What's the other guy? He played for the Jets. Terrell Sinkfield. So there was a ton of bad corners we've had in the past. Elijah Griffin kind of adds to that. And then Ryan Santoso. Graham Gano's be back for week 1. So, that's not a surprise by any stretch of imagination. And then finally, before we head out, the practice squad. Yes, the practice squad. We got Austin Allen, who caught the only touchdown pass in the 3rd preseason game. I was there, by the way. Ryder Anderson, who made some plays during the preseason and was an undrafted free agent out of Indiana and Ole Miss. CJ Board, I don't know why he's on the practice squad. He's not good. He's a decent receiver, a 5, 6, 7 guy, and then he fumbled a kick return, so I don't know why he's on the practice squad. Jashawn Corbin, though he didn't have many yards per carry in the preseason, he actually was solid. Had 2 rushing touchdowns. Max Garcia, I'm happy he made the practice squad because he could be a guy they activate on game day. Or maybe Devery Hamilton, just in case, gets injured or somebody gets injured. Garcia can get called up easily. Harrison Hand, actually, let me do something real quick because I actually just remembered this on the spot. They got Khalil Pimpleton. Khalil Pimpleton, if I'm not mistaken, that's his name. He has he's the guy that was the juggling guy in Hard Knocks. I don't know why it was. So it's Khalil Pimpleton. I'm going to see if they made any transactions. I'm trying to see Dan Salamone's thing. Because I think they cut one of the guys off the practice squad. Because I was just thinking Harrison Hand, and I'm like, did they really cut him off the practice squad possibly? So let me see what Dan Salamone says. Not this guy. Waiting. So, practice squad September 1st. They still haven't announced it, so I will just go on and say Harrison Hand's a part of the practice squad. Veteran corner from the Vikings got beat on a touchdown by Denzel Mims and, still made it back. He still made it back. Just going to check right now. Yep, he's still on the practice squad. Khalil Pimpleton, obviously just talked about him. He's the juggling artist, and he is electric in terms of special teams, so that's why they kept him and, got him on the practice squad. I don't think he was claimed by anybody, which is a little bit of a surprise. Zion Gilbert, I don't think, actually, yes, he was kept. He had a little bit more progression in him than Darren Evans, but he still wasn't good. Will Holden, offensive tackle. He wasn't good as a tackle. He wasn't good as a center. So, he's just going to be a practice squad body. Trenton Thompson, one of my favorite guys. He's a guy who, can cover special teams, block kicks, do all that stuff, box shit. So happy that he returns. He returns on the practice squad. Davis Webb, kind of predictable. A lot of people actually went out there and were like raging that Davis Webb was not on the active roster. You don't carry 3 QBs anymore. That's just not what you do. I'm pretty sure the Dallas Cowboys actually have 1 QB on their roster right now. But you don't carry 3 QBs anymore. With these veteran rules, use them. Put your third QB on there. And then Quincy Roche, obviously we talked about, and not like you dress all 3 QBs on game day anyway. And then there's 3 new faces. There's Henry Mondeau. He was a draft pick for the Steelers, I want to say, or maybe an undrafted free agent out of Oregon in 2020. Played 11 games for them, 1 tackle for a loss and 2 quarterback hits. And then 2021, when he got more playing time, 15 games, 2 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, 2 tackles for a loss, and then 2 quarterback hits. He had 4 pressures last year, the year before that too. And then in terms of snap percentages, 12% defense in 2020, and then 24% defense in 2021. Rotational defensive lineman / pass rusher. Good addition to the practice squad. Wyatt Davis, I liked him in 2021 to be drafted by the Giants within the first 3 rounds. I was very wrong about that because his technique is just very sloppy. He's got the strength. He just doesn't have the technique. And the new regime in Minnesota really didn't want to deal with that, so they just cut him. He's on our practice squad now. 1 sack allowed this preseason. Didn't play in any games last year or in the preseason last year, so that kind of tells you something a little bit, that he wasn't ready or whatever the case may be. He's on the practice squad to develop some skills. And then Chuck Wiley, who's an undrafted free agent out of UTSA. He actually had 2 sacks in the preseason for the Baltimore Ravens. No surprise, the Raven connection. A little bit of a surprise, kind of, because Martindale's not there anymore, and he wasn't in the tenure of Chuck Wiley. But last year for UTSA, 3.5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 36 tackles in 14 games, along with a touchdown, which was a fumble recovery and also a pass deflection. The year before that at UTSA, 2 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 43 tackles, 11 games, and then his prior 3 years are at Ole Miss. So he's a guy that has experience at the college level, played a total of, 4 plus 12, that's 16, then 26, 26 plus 11, which equals 37, plus 14, that's 51 games. So he is experienced in terms of the collegiate level, kind of like a Trenton Thompson, just not 5 years, actually no, not 6 years at the college level. But I will give you guys my cut keep results, basically my accuracy results in terms of the roster cutting and all that stuff. I originally had Quincy Roche making the roster, but they kept O'Shane Zimenez. That's 1. I originally had Jalen Holmes making the roster. They decided to keep Nick Williams, so that's 2. I originally had Andrew Adams making the roster. They kept him on Fox. That is 3. Number 4 is they kept Max Garcia initially, and Jamil Douglas was cut. I thought he was going to make the roster, so that's 4. And then 5, I didn't think Austin Calitro would make the roster. I thought Trenton Thompson would, so that's 5 overall. Got 5 wrong, which is 48 out of 53, which is a 90.5% accuracy. But be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or a video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. New subscribers, welcome. Do all the good stuff. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and all the platforms you listen on. In terms of content, Twin Bill is Wednesday on NYY News TV. Boys in the Big Apple comes back at 8-10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday. So be sure for be there for that. Yankees, NFL preview, a lot of shit's going on. But appreciate you guys coming in, tuning in. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.